my favorite songs are slow and sad. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Welcome to the Sad Song Queens podcast, where we dive deep into the songs that make us cry. I'm Laura Webb.
And I'm Lindsay Wolfington.
Today, we will be chatting with fellow podcasters Diallo, Riddle, and LUXXURY, who are behind the podcast One Song. Diallo is an actor, director, writer, and sometimes DJ. And LUXXURY is a music producer, songwriter, as well as a TikTok creator who whispers the words, interpolations.
Diallo has written and starred in the Emmy-nominated HBO Max series Southside and IFC's Sherman's Showcase. One Song breaks down one song from the pop music canon that you know or need to know, but have never heard quite like this. They go deep on the making of the song, playing the isolated stems, and highlighting collaborators of the song who perhaps never got their flowers.
I knew I was part of the One Song Nation after listening to the Heart Barracuda episode. It made me realize that I love a song that has a gallop rhythm. Who knew? I started to have a deeper appreciation for how songs are made, and it made me listen in a whole new way after listening to their podcast. They graciously became a resource to us as we started on our journey with starting this podcast.
We thought it would be great to invite them on the show and get their perspective on sad songs. And as a special treat for Valentine's, we're going to have a Spotify playlist of our favorite sad love songs.
So grab those tissues and let's get into it, because we all need a good cry.
Diallo and LUXXURY, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, guys.
We're happy to be here.
So we've been thinking about some of our favorite sad love songs. And I know you guys may have sad love songs. You may have just your favorite sad songs. And it occurred to us that Valentine's Day is coming up. And how fun would it be to dig in and talk about sad songs today?
Yeah, and we always love having conversations with fellow music lovers and seeing what resonates with you. It's always super fascinating to us.
So great. Let's dive in. Talk to us a little bit about why you're interested in music, why you do the One Song podcast.
Well, my love for music comes from being a listener and fan first. And then I started making it myself kind of late in life. I had another career. And there was a moment where, they laid everybody off from this .com company. And I was like, well, what do I really want to do? It was like a midlife crisis, like a quarter life moment to just be like, what comes next? And gradually that was noticing that I like music and therefore I should maybe do something in that realm. And first song led to the next song, led to the band, led to coming down to LA because I signed a publishing deal, led to co-writing, led to almost getting sued by Don Henley, led to a DJ career, and led to meeting Diallo, and then in that moment of COVID and all of this coming together where DJing was kind of not an option anymore, but podcasting, and I'd been doing the TikToks about interpolation.
Yes.
That converged in this sort of new door opening of like, hey, there's talking about music is also fun. Making music and now talking about music, and making music's a little less than it was before, but it's still there.
I think similarly, from the time I can remember, I had my little drum set and I was playing along to everything from the Muppets to the Beatles to my dad's jazz records. And at some point that drumming became DJing in college because I figured out, I could make more money just DJing.
You're like, I'll play other people's music. You're like the pre-music supervisor.
Exactly.
No, they're super related. I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
By the way, I love music supervision. There was a brief time when I was doing music supervision for my friends' indie films because they knew that I had like a pretty, but I quickly figured out that I love what you guys do, and I think I didn't want to be the person sending a letter to the Shondells and saying, hey, can we use Crimson and Clover in this indie film that's not going to make any money?
So much fun. What are you talking about?
The paperwork chased me out of there, but I've worked
Understandable.
and I wanted to just know more about that because it was just, I was like, guys, the film is a short film. It's 5 minutes. It's literally called Crimson and Clover because that song means so much to the central character. This will never see a profit. And just the number of people that I had to email with, it was just insane. So I was just like, I don't know that I could do this. So I went back to just spinning other people's music. And along the way, I became a comedy writer, because I was working for Andre Balazs at the Standard Hotels. I was booking DJs. I was booking the models who went into the booth. We had some great people. And some of them, like Mia Moretti, some of the models were in the box and they were like, hey, I like the music that you're spinning. can I spin here too? And like
Amazing.
she started DJing there. Yeah. And so that's it was cross pollination in terms of like, models getting turned on to music and some of the DJs modeling, that's always been a thing. But it's always
what a
been
perfect
fun.
place, the Standard, to like
it was
bridge
special
the
at that
gap
time.
of beautiful
It was so
people.
I'm
cool.
so sad when I drive past the buildings. I mean, the downtown one is gone. The one on Sunset is gone. I passed by and I'm like, these were cultural moments.
Totally.
We were our own CBGBs in the early 2000s.
To go to LA at the time when I wasn't in LA, when I would come to LA, it was to stay at the Standard. Like that was like half of the visit was that cool spot where just the bar was cool, the DJs were cool.
The view was cool.
The view was cool.
Yeah.
It
No,
I
mattered.
will say
That's
that
a
the
scene.
rooms were never great.
No, they
but
weren't.
the goal was to keep at least some of the rooms around $99 at a time when like
was smart.
hotels on the strip were
Right.
frequently charging $300, $400. So the goal was always to keep them about $99, and that way you get in the artists, you get in the the wild freaks, and keep the whole scene lots of fun. I think we talked on our podcast.
We were the wild freaks.
Yeah. And like the late night at what was the diner called right there? Or like, because that was open late
Or
night.
the hot dog
too.
place? What was the diner? Or
You
did
talking
you
about
eat it?
Carney's across the street?
No.
Well,
I
that's what I'm thinking of.
No,
But you're
but
talking
they-
about in the Standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next to the chair that's like an egg.
It took on a couple of names. I think the
Okay.
last one was which sounds like a Stefan bit from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, you can go to this restaurant called Oh
my
It was
God.
just a standard restaurant.
Okay,
It was supposed to
yeah.
be like a diner.
Yeah.
But Sean Houseman and my boss Sebastian Mueller went out of their way to sort of make it a diner, but to give it a like cacti and desert motif.
Yes,
So that you felt
I
like you
remember
could have
that.
stopped on Route 66, even though you're on, in the heart of Sunset Boulevard.
I lived like in walking distance. I lived in WeHo, and I definitely spent many a nights on it there.
we all?
I know.
It was a fun
Yeah.
special time, and we always were chasing that sort of vibe that like because Casablanca Records used to be right across the street, Neil Bogart,
Right.
and it used to be right across. That building is not there anymore, but like
Oh, right.
now it's like some weird office building. It's always like for lease, but there was a time when there was so much culture there and stuff. And so
What
we
was
were
the
just trying to
hotel
bring
that
it
was
back.
right at the street that was like, in my mind again, the visitor from out of town? You would always hit the Standard, and then the other one that was a little fancier.
The Mondrian?
The Mondrian.
Mondrian.
That's
Thank
exactly
you.
right.
Mondrian.
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
that-
Sky Bar. Exactly
Oh,
right.
That
yeah.
was Ian Schrager's,
Schrager, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
foray into. I don't think Ian Schrager has anything to do with the Mondrian anymore.
But I think the Sky Bar's still there.
The Sky Bar's still
Yeah,
there.
I haven't
Here's
been
what's
there.
crazy. I thought it was so cool. It's one of those design things that you can never anticipate. When you go up in the elevator at the Mondrian and you step out, they're always like they've cut a hole in the wall and they're shining up a light, and it's supposed to look like a TV.
Oh.
But here's the thing. We live in an age of flat screen TVs, so
Right.
that means
reference
nothing
is
to my
lost.
kid. Yeah, that
Yeah.
reference is totally lost to anybody
Oh my
under the
God.
age of 40 now.
That's
like
right.
What were you known for DJing? Like, did you have a particular
my style.
style? Yeah.
I'm happy to say that I was a leading champion of open format. So I was just like, just make it cool. It can be Kruder and Dorfmeister. It can be some obscure drum and bass. At that time, I would argue that it was very hard to go out in LA and hear hip hop next to Daft Punk or whatever.
Right.
There was great stratification, if you will. You know, you either went to like a full-on Bad Boy Bill rave, or it was like hip hop night. And I think the Standard was one of the first to just be like, hey guys, let's do it open format. And there were a couple of like restaurants that tried it. I remember when I first met DJ AM, like it was crazy that he would spin like all these different genres on one night. But as the decade progressed, that sort of became the prevailing soundtrack of LA nightlife.
I miss those days.
I know. I was
I mean, I
just
do, but I don't. Like,
Yeah.
I like my couch more now.
Yeah,
but,
it's kind of nice to have them in a little box of memories.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think I need to do that as much anymore.
Yeah.
Although-
Diallo's pretty good at you're still good at like being in the scene. Yeah.
Doing
Having
research.
doing the research
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
talked about on our
But I
last
do
episode.
because
Yeah.
you know, like this, man,
You got the
the
energy
current
for it.
generation. Well, sometimes I have the energy for it. Ask me at 8 a.m. But
Exactly.
no,
That's
but
That's the trade-off. Yeah.
but nowadays, my children get to school. That's the trade-off. No, there's the current generation. They don't go out like we did. I
Right.
think everybody's been noticing. Like they
Yeah.
don't drink as much. They don't go out as much. And I do think it leads to just a different relationship with music. Like for them,
Yeah.
so often the music is only the soundtrack for that video that they're watching.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that I need like 8-minute Carl Craig remixes.
Yeah.
But I
And by
like
the
an
way, the
8-minute
soundtrack, the 10-second soundtrack to the 30-second, 10-second video they're watching for that matter, right?
Yeah.
Little snippets.
But it is funny to
Right.
see like groups like the Yeah as like maps. My kids know maps. You know what I
Right.
mean? They may not know they may not, they probably know Heads Will Roll too. They know a couple of Yeah songs, but I'm saying like, it's funny to see which songs sort of get plucked out of nowhere and achieve TikTok.
But it's also disembodied from the band. Like they may know the song, but they may have no idea who Karen O is.
They might have passed Karen O at Trader Joe's. They wouldn't know.
That's right. That's the difference.
Well, maybe we should seg from nightlife into sadness.
Sad
so
life.
welcome.
Sometimes that is the end of the night often.
True.
That's
Or the day
3 a.m.
or the day
lonely
after.
sadness.
When do you listen to sad songs? Do you find?
I mean, you just said it, and I flashed back to you go home and you cry and you want to die. The Smiths, How Soon Is Now, that song it really captured a moment, especially in high school and college when you were so powerless. And like, especially for me, maybe my personal experience, like not getting a lot of chicks. So the entirety of that Morrissey lyric is there's a club that you'd like to go. You could meet someone who really loves you. You go and you stand on your own. You leave on your own. And you go home and you cry and you want to die. That's like the quintessential Morrissey, the quintessential Smith lyric.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me want to cry, actually, but it more captures that moment of teenage, just like, when will I have what I want in life? When will I have love? When will I have attention? When will I have anything?
Well, and I remember I loved Morrissey's "The More You Ignore Me, the Closer I Get."
Oh my God.
Morrissey's got some good ones.
Right? Is that one of your top sad love
that
songs?
wasn't so. It's interesting as I was like thinking about what would be a sad love song. I mean, for me, I'm not a super lyrical guy, in spite of the Morrissey, quotes. Like for the most part, I find that some songs that make me sad, whether or not they're love songs, like they might have something lyrically that's momentary that might. Like one that comes to mind just as I'm saying that is like Portishead has a song called Pedestal. Mm-hmm. And musically, it's a dirge. It's extremely slow. There's a giant slab of bass that hits you in the face. But it's this unexpected, it goes boom, da-doom, ga, ba-boom, ga-doom, ga, boom. It's this 808 like boom, syncopated. So it's shocking. And then, so that sets up the sad feeling, like I'm melancholy, it's slow, it's bad. And then she punches me in the face, Beth Gibbons, with the line, you abandoned me, how I suffered. And I recently had an experience where I heard that in context with something happening in my life. And I just broke down on the couch for like an hour of just absolute letting it all out, letting decades of something come out. I haven't fully processed what it was, but it clearly was attached to this idea. It was both the lyric about something abandoning me, so I must have some kind of abandonment issues. And this
Don't we all?
musical,
Totally.
the musical bed, though, I think the setting was so crucial. And that's ironic because the Smiths is the opposite. The Smiths will be, Johnny Marr will have this jangly, happy, the tempo is upbeat, we've got these funky bass lines, and then Morrissey comes in with those lyrics. So it's the juxtaposition. But anyway, that's what popped in my head when you asked, is like this Portishead song, really like, that's how to devastate me. If you want to devastate me, play that song and I'll just collapse.
We can go around and say our favorite sad love songs. Maybe we'll all do one. So I'll just start because my runner-up, I feel like, is very close to that Portishead song. Olivia Rodrigo, Traitor. So this is for our younger generation. But I feel like anyone who felt betrayed or abandoned, right? Like that song like screams it.
Right. That's part of the love experience. Like technically that wasn't a love song that I said, but the love experience is all of it. It's the attraction, it's the falling and the infatuation, then it's the aftermath. So like that fits. That's part of the timeline.
Oh, yeah.
The love
and I just
timeline.
feel like her performance, the whole like, ain't it funny, is like that F is also like an F-U, you know what I mean? Anyway, I just remember when that song came out and I first heard it and I was like, oh my God, any 16, 18, 25, 40-year-old woman who feels this way, like this is their song right now. So that's my runner-up.
That wasn't.
No, well, it was my 3, and then I remembered, so I'll just say what I remembered, was Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You. Her version of I Will Always Love You, I feel like is one of the saddest love songs. And we talk a lot about how sometimes things are sadder when they're like nice or hopeful. Like that feeling of like when someone does something nice for you, it's almost like,
oh my God, you're right. That gets me too.
Yeah.
Like kindness, when it's like, when there's like a show and someone does something kind, that's what really, that gets me
the commercials
too. Yeah.
that you're like, bringing over to the older like neighbor or something. I'm like, oh my God.
So kind.
I know.
That's really fair.
Yeah.
Because they're songs of like great hope.
Right.
But if you get the sense that either the singer-songwriter doesn't believe that there's actually any hope here, or if their own personal story is sad. This is not one of my songs, but We've Only Just Begun by the Carpenters. Like, you can't hear Karen Carpenter sing that and
Agreed.
know that like she's not going to be around that much more. You know, like it's just like we've
That's
only
right.
just
You know
begun.
the story behind
If you know the story
Yeah.
about the singer behind it, our very first episode was about rehab.
Yeah.
You know, which is not
Yeah.
quite a good example of that, but it's just like
Oh,
when the
no.
story
Yeah.
of the singer,
Forevermore, when you hear that song, you can't not think of her.
Yeah.
Amy on rehab,
Yeah.
Karen on We've Only Just Begun, like those kind of things. Like I definitely get the chills if I'm
Yeah.
They
not.
kill.
not
Well, that's
in the
actually
best place.
one of the other ones on my that I brought was.
Should we jump in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, is there's a Pretender song called "Back on the Chain Gang."
Yes.
And I have follow-up questions, by the way, on all this stuff, because I'm curious, like in the Olivia Rodrigo song, is there, here, put a pin in this question, then I'll finish what I was saying. Is there like a moment in the song? Because I'm curious about the like combination of lyric and melody and like is there something about it that makes it happen because of this combination of elements?
Well, one, I'm not a music creator. So
But is there just a moment that gets you?
But the moment that gets
Yeah.
me is like, "You're a traitor." Like the big one at the end. Like
Delivery.
that girl
Yeah.
is like pouring her heart out like,
Mm.
"You screwed me, dude."
Yeah.
And that whole idea of like, you didn't cheat, but you're still a traitor too. Like we've all like betrayal rather than just
Yeah,
the
betrayal,
simple
because you had to
act
have
of-
trust to feel betrayed.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Which is also
Wait,
very
now I
important
want
in
to
a
know
relationship.
what is the story in that song? I don't know. The song.
What? Like the whole story behind this album is that she and her
High School.
co-lead on High School Musical,
Yeah.
Josh
show.
Bassett.
Joshua Bassett,
Yeah.
Okay.
was friends with Sabrina Carpenter.
What?
And she's like, "You want to be with her. You want to be with her." And he's like, "You're just paranoid," which is a lyric she'll say. And
I didn't know
then-
this was a crossover episode. I had no
Right.
idea.
Hey.
And then they break up, and 2 weeks later he gets together with Sabrina.
I was just going to ask if you knew that before you heard the song.
The first time I heard it, my niece played it for me, but later.
One of
I
our
knew that.
babysitters turned me on to Olivia.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like it's almost like, who are the young women in your life, and how are they going to turn you on to
Yeah,
Olivia?
right,
yeah.
Did the
Yeah.
context matter? Like, did knowing that story behind the song impact how you listened to it, or you heard it? It was already affecting you,
It
and
was-
then later it was more of an explanation of why maybe
There's
the
nothing.
emotion was in
There's
there.
nothing really hidden in this song. It's like exactly what
It's
It's
on
happened.
a
your
pop
sleeve.
song,
Right?
It's on the nose.
I also think there's like a lot of power in when you pull out music
Yeah.
too, right? That,
Yeah.
Like
Oh, sure.
we can go back to the beginning of "I Will
vulnerable.
Always Love You" is
Very vulnerable.
a
and-
cappella, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but
Dolly said she prefers Whitney's
she
version
does.
too. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I also had a roommate like before I got married who had this exact same situation happen to her. So I thought of her like the whole
So
time.
the situation is that he wasn't cheating with Sabrina.
No, he was like friends with somebody. And
but
was,
she probably sensed, oh, they have way too much chemistry.
Right.
Oh my God, I can so identify with that. I
Right.
was in junior high school. I missed my first sexual experience. I pushed it into the future because in the 7th grade party, I was in the closet with Jeannie. I shan't say her last name. And I was like, okay, this is it. It's about to happen. Something, whatever, a kiss, not
Right.
something
Yeah.
innocent.
Yeah.
And she said something about a friend of mine. I'm like, oh, you like Patrick? Oh, I think he likes you too. And I was like relieved. And I
Oh, right.
wouldn't have to have this uncomfortable first kiss or whatever. So I completely punted.
Aw.
I kicked the can down the road of a first moment because I was like, you should be with Patrick. I'll try and engineer it so the two of you get together.
right.
So I was like my own little Olivia Rodrigo.
Oh.
Wait. I missed the last lyric. What
God,
was
I
that
wish
last
you
okay.
thought that through before I went ahead and fell in love with you.
Oh.
So in some ways, he could
Sounds
not
amazing.
have done anything different.
Probably.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like there's nothing
Yeah.
he could have. He didn't act on it.
Right.
They
can't
he was
blame
like,
him.
He was like, hey,
Yeah.
this works. Like you and me, Olivia, let's go out. He could have waited more than 2 weeks.
I
Yeah,
mean,
agreed.
Could have waited
honestly.
more than 2 weeks.
I so identify with this, and I'm still working through it because it's not necessarily to the individual's
Patrick these
advantage
days?
who's doing the right thing.
You're like, oh, him
Yeah.
and Ginny have like 12 kids.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
Patrick and Jeannie went their separate ways. I don't even know if they
Oh,
ever
see,
connected.
well,
it was a complete waste of everybody's
should have gotten your
time.
kiss, my
I
friend.
should have
I
got my
know.
7th grade kiss.
That was probably your insecurity in the moment.
Absolutely my
Yeah.
insecurity. It was
Yeah.
fear. It was
Yeah.
completely driven by fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes, right. So they say this about, what's the word? People pleasers. Like, I think I'm coming to this. This is a big moment for me in this last few months of like, okay, I think I am a people pleaser, but that's not like a good thing. That's
Right.
coming out of fear of other people being mad at me or something else. And like, that's what I'm facing right now, like in a big way. So I think that was it. I didn't want Patrick to be mad at me. I don't know what it would have been in 7th grade.
Yeah.
But people pleasing, if you're out there in people pleasing land, join me on the journey
Yeah.
to sorting out whatever deeper issue of fear is causing you to think that making other people happy first is a good thing all
Yeah.
the time.
But
no.
question for everybody here, because we're all probably the same generation. I'm a people pleaser. Like,
Oh,
I don't know. I think there's also a
interesting.
little bit something generational.
That could be it, and how we were raised.
Yeah.
I mean, I think being a woman raised in the South,
Okay.
like,
Interesting.
I mean, you
That's its own
are.
version
It's
of it.
We're both from Atlanta.
indoctrinated. Yeah,
Yeah, we're
like,
both from Atlanta.
and like manners and
Yeah.
and like and women. You know, I think women in the workforce, we were definitely like we
Okay.
are held to a different.
That's its own different thing
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
But
Interesting.
Enneagrams. Have you all done Enneagrams?
I was going to say, are
What
you
is
a
it?
peacemaker? Because I'm a peacemaker.
I'm the helper.
I don't know this. Is this
Yeah.
like ENFP kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like a 1 through
Kinda.
9 definition of it's a personality test.
Okay.
You
I
know,
don't
somebody
know.
sent me that personality test just
Yeah.
this week, and I did not get around to clicking on it.
Well,
Yeah.
your homework
Yeah.
for next week.
Please
I thought it was
report
Cambridge
back.
Analytica scraping your data
Yeah.
from.
I'd like to say that my sad song was going to be something really outrageous, like, you know, California Girls. Like, oh man, it just makes me so sad. Admittedly, even the idea of sad love songs, like what is love?
Right.
I hope I didn't go too outside the traditional ideas of what that is. One of my songs I brought in today is the song "Flying High in the Friendly Skies" by Marvin Gaye off of the What's Going On opus. You know, one of the best albums. I wouldn't even qualify.
Can we
to
hear a
say
little bit of that? I
R&B.
don't think I know
Yeah.
it.
Flying High?
you
Well,
have a
let me
snippet?
set it up just a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah.
So
Are-
Flying
or
High,
DJ.
What's Going On famously starts off with What's Going On title track, amazing song. We've all heard it. And then I think he goes into What's Happening, Brother, which has one of my other really, really sad moments, you know, in terms of like what's being said. And I should say that I'm bringing in 3 types of sad today.
Awesome.
Good.
This is the kind of sad, I think just musically, like it puts me like, it's like, oh, so much pain.
Right.
And What's Happening, Brother, at one point, you know, he's talking about like, yeah, how's our team doing? You know, do you think they stand a chance? Like he's having all this small talk with a guy who just got back from Vietnam. And at the end of this part, he's like, oh, and also, how in the world have you been? And the way that Marvin sings, how in the world have you been? Like, you can tell, like, there's so much subtext to this conversation. Like, he's looking at the guy, he's worried. And then we get to Flying High in the Friendly Skies, which Marvin lifted off of, I think it's like United or American Airlines. It was like their slogan at the time.
Mhm.
And it's musically so sad. And it is a love song, but it's a love song about heroin. And it's about this, you know, ostensibly this person he's following. Marvin's singing both as him and as the GI back from Vietnam, but he's talking about I go to the place where the joy awaits, you know, and then he gets to this one part. You talk about parts, because I do think that there are parts to at least this song where I'm like,
Yeah,
you got to feel it.
Yeah.
And
Gotta be
it's
ready
this
for it. It's coming
part.
up.
Here comes one of the greatest lines I think ever written. The line that gets me is he says, well, I know I'm hooked, my friend, to the boy, old 70s slang for heroin, boy. Well, I know I'm hooked, my friend, to the boy who makes slaves out of men. And
Yeah.
when he sings that line, it breaks me up every time.
Fucking hell.
Because to me, that is addiction.
That is addiction.
Right.
And it's so vulnerable with with his falsetto.
It's so beautiful. His
Totally.
vocals are straight
Like
up
a child
angelic. Like they are,
pleading. Yes.
they're so clean and they're so pure. And like you got to remember, you got to put in. He produced this record. He's the producer and does all the lead vocals. And he's in there with like the Detroit. He's in there with the Funk Brothers. He's in there with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, which is I think
Sometimes
Wow.
the Detroit Lions, right? The
There's-
football players. that are his buddies.
By the way, that conversation you hear at the
Yeah,
very
yeah.
beginning, like, hey man, I don't know, what's up, my brother? That's like apparently Don Cornelius, the
Oh,
host
really?
of Soul
Soul
Train.
Train?
That's like at one of his parties and stuff. Like you've got all the ambient sound.
Yeah.
Like he goes in the studio and he makes just this amazing album that has its highs. First, you know, R&B song about environmentalism,
Right.
like it's got all this good stuff on it. But then Flying High in the Friendly Skies, man, it just there's something in that.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
And
it was
then
rough.
that's enough. And then with the lens of how he was shot by his father, and this
I know. I was
sad
thinking
legacy
that
of this
whole like
story.
his whole
Yeah.
And Marvin had his addiction issues, and
Yeah.
apparently he was acting out one day at the house one morning, and you know his father took him out, you know, and it's a sad story.
you can hear the pain in his voice.
Yeah.
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 I mean it's
And there would have been people who he was around, you know, shooting up at that time. You know, there's just something. There's something in that song.
yeah.
You know, and I will say right off the bat, I'm not one of I come to music almost always looking for a sense of joy. I don't want to be understood. You know what I mean? Like, no, seriously, it's like,
Yeah.
it's my weird tick. Like
Yeah.
I come to music almost as like medication. I don't necessarily want to, it's a weird thing to say that like, I don't want to be understood. I just want to have the joy. I just want to have the feel.
No, I mean, for the most part, most of the music that I choose to listen to, it's because I'm choosing an emotion that I want to have.
Right.
And that emotion that I want to have is usually either something upbeat, like we love electronic music, punk, justice, or it's something I want to rock hard, so it's the Led Zeppelin. Or it's like the dub. Like recently, I've been really obsessed with like dub. So there's like there's a tempo range, and there's a kind of the fact that it's instrumental and very kind of spacey. But I don't choose to be sad, so I'm not really picking ballads. But sometimes I am, and sometimes I do, and that's where some of the songs that I chose, come from. Because sometimes you kind of do. Right. You're already there, maybe, and you just want it to be reinforced, or maybe cured from it because of somebody else's emotions.
Yeah.
I mentioned before the Pretenders song and that moment in it. And also we were talking about context because I can't remember if I would have known the context the first time I heard Back on the Chain Gang. But now that I do, it kills me every time. And it's a combination of the story of what was happening in Chrissie Hynde's life, but also musically what she does in this moment in the bridge. So Chrissie Hynde from the Pretenders, the first couple records she makes with Pete Farndon and James Honeyman Scott on bass and guitar respectively. That's the band. That is the core of the band. Martin Chambers on drums. But bass player Farndon, I think, has a heroin overdose, I want to say. I don't remember the chronology, but both of those band members pass away or die of overdoses. And Chrissie Hynde is left without her friends and bandmates. And this song, to me, is kind of a questioning, a sort of shaking of the fist to the heavens, of abandonment. Oh, wow, it's another abandonment song.
Luxury. Welcome to therapy.
I mean, podcasting
I'd like to take this opportunity to say that one song is over. It is done. I'm leaving the podcast.
No, don't leave me.
That was a thinker.
I was like, whoa.
Diallo wanted you guys to have good content.
I know. I'm like, whoa.
That was what we call in our business a thinker. But you got
that was a thinky one. Abandonment. The fear of abandonment is real. And in this song, she is, I'll die as I stand here today, knowing that deep in my heart, they'll fall to ruin one day for making us part. And her rage against the unfairness of these young children, these 20-year-old men, who I think she was slightly older, and she was really the mastermind of the band. She brought it together, and some of my favorite records are those first two Pretenders records anyway. So in this moment, that is happening anyway in the music, but also then knowing the story just adds this other layer where I just can't handle it. But also I just love how in that moment she's hitting that high note, she's harmonizing, and we go from this dark cloud of a minor bridge into this major key, and we're back again. And it's like, there's hope. There's hope.
Which can sometimes be sadder, right? Yeah. And I did not know any of that. So now I will listen to this song totally different.
Yeah, and the whole guitar solo in this song makes me like happy. Yeah. So funny.
It's such a happy melody.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Oh, wow.
My City Is Gone makes me sad.
That's a sad one too, right?
But it's because it was the theme song of Rush Limbaugh. Anytime I heard that song, that was my first exposure to the Pretenders.
Yeah.
I grew up in Atlanta, listened to a lot of radio.
Okay.
In fact, I have so many questions because I feel like you had to be in Atlanta to know some of these radio stars. They were huge. You couldn't tell me, not having lived anywhere but Atlanta, that guys like Ludlow Porsche weren't like famous all around the world because
I know. I brought this up in our episode that aired. Because I was talking about going to Turtles Records.
Turtles!
And you were laughing.
I was like,
what?
laughing
I do not know this brand.
Yeah.
I know Turtles.
Yeah.
In fact,
and you had to line up to go get tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Turtle Records. In fact, there was one across the
R.I.P.
street from Greenbrier Mall where I grew up.
Oh,
and I went to that Turtles. So this is not on the topic of sad songs.
No, it's okay.
I bought the maxi single for Tupac's Hit 'Em Up at that Turtles, and I sat there, listened to it in my Honda Accord, and I was just like, oh, this is bad. I was like, this is not beef anymore. This is very personal.
Gonna get hurt.
Yeah, I did think that. I was like, someone's gonna get shot.
And 99X. Total to 99X.
I remember when 99X. Rob, are you from Atlanta too?
Chattanooga too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Close.
So you know, 99X. First off, changed everybody's listening habits. Totally. And I remember being a little bit upset because I feel like 99 before it became X, which stood for alternative.
Wait, I was going to say, would that have happened in D.C. too? I grew up in the D.C. area.
Might have. I feel like around the time that Nirvana came out with Smells Like, 99 changed its format. So it had previously been...
I don't even remember what it was.
Okay, so I used to listen to V103 for all my black music needs. And then I listened to 99, whatever it was, because 99.7, because that was where I would hear like Swing Out Sister and Casey Kasem's
Quality.
Top 10 and all that. It was like
yeah.
a pop station.
Totally.
And then overnight, it was like, we play Alice in Chains, Nirvana and Soundgarden, and it was just like, it was very, divisive at the time because some people just wanted their pop station, but I stuck with it, and that's how I ended up at the, longtime listeners of our show know that Lollapalooza, the second one, when it was a traveling company, came to Atlanta, and I went to go see Ice Cube, and yet it was the first time I'd ever heard of this group, and I was like, oh, Pearl Jam's pretty cool. And like I went out and bought the 10 cassette.
Yeah.
Probably at Turtles.
Yeah.
Because that was my
Turtles.
record buying place.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I know. Don't mind too.
Sorry, I didn't know we were going down this Turtles path.
I know. Sorry.
Well, you
It made me think of it because I remember you laughing, being like, Turtles.
I know, it's such a funny name for like music.
It was a turtle who was carrying around a boombox.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's a cool
I know.
turtle.
Remember there were like little stamps
Yes!
and like you would get
Oh, I haven't thought about that in forever. So there was a little two-shop. There was a Turtles and there was a Blimpie.
Yes.
which was Subway.
You're excited about that
Yes,
Blimpie.
I know
yeah,
Blimpie.
I don't
It's a
know
good
about
Blimpie.
Atlanta.
This is a divisive episode because we could do this all day.
Okay.
And you look like...
Okay, Lindsay, it's our turn because I went to school in D.C.
Oh, good.
And you
Which
were,
part?
I went to Georgetown. And,
My
and-
dad's a Georgetown guy.
Really?
Yeah.
And you were a music, you were a radio person, right? You were a music
Yes, but in
director?
Providence, Rhode Island.
But were you the music director at your college station?
I was just a DJ.
Okay. I was the music director at Georgetown's music radio station too.
amazing.
So we have something going on
Yes.
here too,
Okay.
guys.
I like it. I
Okay.
support y'all.
Yeah.
This is the axis over here.
But
and you have
yours
another
was like a
axis.
real college radio station where you got
No.
to decide what you played?
Our college radio station, okay, this is Georgetown University. This is a Catholic school. 1 year prior, or maybe 2 years before I arrived at the station,
It was
this
just
powerful
Gregorian chants.
WGTB was this powerful kind of local, cool, like I was from San Francisco, where KUSF I used to work at. It was like that. It was big. Everyone knew it, or CalX or something like that, right? And the year before, the administration shut it down because of some like musical choice
They
that was
played
made.
Cop Killer.
They played
Yeah.
they played Ozzy,
Yes.
whatever it was that
Whatever,
they played.
yeah.
It offended the wrong person in
Right,
the
right.
wrong Jesuit,
boy. Yeah.
parish.
Oh my God.
And we went to only being available like in the dorm, like if you like
Oh.
turn the dial, which nobody was doing. So it was very small like listenership. So there was
Right.
zero power. But there was still the prestige of being at this station, and I got all the free tickets, and I went to see
Ooh.
Public Enemy and
Ooh.
Anthrax, and I interviewed Primus backstage. Cool stuff when you're
Yeah.
18, 19.
Wow,
Absolutely.
really
So
cool.
all the perks,
Yeah.
but none of the listening.
And we were the opposite. We were a commercial modern rock radio station, and no one was supposed to know we were students.
Oh, what?
So we had to
That's
like,
interesting.
we
Yeah.
would have.
Oh, because you weren't
like,
being paid, like college football or something?
No, during the year you weren't paid, but if you stayed during the summer and you had like a regular shift, you got
Okay.
paid. So I did
Why
like
was it a
morning
secret
drive.
then?
They wanted you to be professional.
Okay.
So
They were worried that the listeners would not consider you professional
right.
DJs.
I mean, most people knew, but it's
Yeah.
not. You weren't supposed to like talk about going to class or
I
being
see.
in college, and it was a playlist, so
Oh.
we didn't get to
Oh,
actually
you didn't get to
choose.
choose.
We did have like a music meeting where you voted on like what
Yeah.
you liked and stuff. Which
How expansive was the vote? Like, could you nominate something to be added to the playlist?
Not usually.
Uh-huh. So
But
who was-
I used to like they used to play the song. They'd play a good like a minute and a half, and you'd rate it 1 to 10.
Wow.
And most of the time I was like I remember when Santana with Rob Thomas Smooth was on the list, and I was like, I know this voice, like, and the whole time, and at the end I was like, it's Matchbox 20, but it was Rob Thomas. But that was kind of a pop song, so it was actually like our music director was like, do we play this on a modern rock radio station? And but we did. It was like the biggest song of the summer, and
Oh, I
we'd already
remember
played
that.
Matchbox 20, so it made
Yeah,
sense.
it's one of the biggest songs of all time. Isn't that crazy?
I
Is
know.
it?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean,
Wow,
it's
yeah,
catchy.
It felt huge at
Yeah.
the time.
Like
And
one of the biggest radio songs.
crossover.
By
Yeah.
some measure, it's like one of the most played on the radio or something like that.
I
Yeah.
remember I was we were at what's the Brazilian place on Melrose that everybody goes to? Oh, Bossa Nova.
Yes,
yeah,
I
yeah.
love
I was at
Bossa
Bossa
Nova.
Nova, and my friend Aunt Demby showed up with a girl, and I was like, she looks really familiar when she went to the restaurant. I was like, Aunt, who is that? She's like, she's Maria from the Santana
Oh my God,
music
Maria,
video. Yeah,
Maria.
I was like,
Wow.
that's Maria.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Why are you hanging out with Maria?
Yeah. Oh my
I feel
god.
so lucky.
It could have also been Maria from Mr. Jones, Counting Crows.
Well, who's the leader? Who's the lead singer? Is it Adam Duritz?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I first hit
Yeah.
LA, man, it's just one of those things that happens when you first get to a town. Like inevitably, like somebody is tapped in and they're like, hey, let's go to a house party. You end up at some famous person's house. I
Yeah.
feel like that happens to everybody when you move here.
Right.
And for me, it's Adam Duritz. I ended up at this
He was your celeb.
palatial top of Mulholland House, and I'm like, who the heck
That's
lives
your
here?
Mr. Jones money?
And
Good for him.
Mr. Jones, did he have his around here?
Yes.
I get lost sometimes.
Wait, actually,
that
sorry.
could be a sad song.
Sullivan Street on that album is a
that one of your
favorite
sad songs?
song.
Oh,
it's not
see,
one of
I
them
knew
today, but I forgot about it, and you
Adam
reminded
had a
me.
very emotive way of singing. Like you heard the crack in his voice. And,
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Laura,
Yeah, I
throw
know,
us
but
with a sad love song.
all right. I mean, it's a classic, but it's ABBA, Winner Takes It All.
Oh, nice.
'Cause-
Nice choice.
It
You
just,
got an ABBA fan over here. at
Oh,
least.
yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
who
yeah.
doesn't like ABBA?
Yeah.
I
mean,
Laura
they're
thought for
yeah.
a minute I didn't like
All right.
ABBA. but I like
Diallo's
them.
like, yeah, that's
Okay.
Cool.
All
No,
right.
I do like the disco songs. I don't know if I know Winner Takes All.
You
Oh,
seen
okay,
Mamma
we
Mia?
Yeah,
Okay.
the play.
That's all good.
You
No,
know,
I know.
wanna
It's-
talk- this is such
it's
a
a blind
musical
spot. It's a blind
This
spot.
is such a musical. I think this is from a record that's like titled in such a way it's like ostensibly a musical, but like it's just a record. Like I think they intended for this to be a full story, like on the
Possibly.
stage, and then whatever it didn't happen.
Like how Bohemian Rhapsody was supposed to be the cowboy song.
Yeah.
And it was going to be a whole
Right.
play about the
Right.
cowboy. Yeah.
So basically, Agnetha, who's singing, and Bjorn, who wrote it, they were married. They broke up. They still stayed in a band together. He wrote the song. They
and
say
she's singing it.
Yeah. They say it's not about the divorce, but
No.
how can it not? Like this emotion, like
That is so cruel for him to have done the thing, written the thing, and had her sing the thing.
yeah.
Like I used to kiss you. Does it feel the same
Oh, this
I know.
is gutting.
when she calls your name?
This is very Olivia Rodrigo.
So would he? Not that you need to
Yeah.
flip the gender, but
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
flip the gender, is it basically him saying, "Does he kiss the same?" Is that I'm trying to understand based on their past together.
Yeah. I mean, I think he changed it because he was the one who went into a new
Right.
relationship. So for her, because I guess I've been
Oh, that's worse than I thought.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah.
basically
It's
saying,
savage.
"I'm in a new relationship, and I want you to sing this."
Right.
Oh,
I want you to wonder if
come on, Bjorn. That
my new
ain't
girl's
cool.
a better kisser than you, the singer.
But then, so they stayed in the band. He writes this for her. And apparently he was very drunk one night, just poured out of him in 15 minutes, you know.
All the good ones are like that. Right?
I know,
15
And
minutes,
that
half an
comes
hour.
up. I know, it comes up on like
Yeah.
they're like, I don't know. So he writes it for her. They are going through the divorce. I think they're even just separated at that point. He gets in another relationship. And at first he thought maybe he would sing it, but then he thought, oh, actually her voice is so wonderful, which
Mhm.
how can you argue?
Yeah.
And they all apparently say like that they cried in the studio and she did love it. I mean, it's because it's about their
Okay,
relationship.
So it was a nice cathartic moment, maybe.
Yeah.
Some healing.
But then you're like, how do you perform that every night? You stay in this band with
Yeah.
them. The other couple were married and divorced too, and they all
Mhm.
stayed in the band, and then it broke up. But
This also might be
Ugh.
at the point where they're not touring so much or performing so much anymore. I think they
Yeah.
became sort of these last two records or so. I think this is
yeah,
Super Trooper. Is that where this one's from?
yes,
I think so.
Yeah,
I
which
think-
that one kills me too.
Yeah.
I know.
The breakupness between both couples because
Yeah.
both couples were married to each
Right,
other or
right.
had been with each other.
Yeah.
And you feel it in the music. You,
Yeah.
You sense it in the sort of the push-pull, the dynamic. It's very emotional for those reasons. You really feel
Yeah,
it. It's
and-
interesting. That's been a theme today,
I
right?
was
How the
gonna say-
backstory of so many of these songs.
is a
Yeah.
real
Yeah,
feeling.
right.
Yeah.
And you feel. I mean, you hear her.
Maybe that
like,
comes across. Yeah,
Right.
maybe that's
Yeah.
part of the special sauce.
Yeah, and I just think like that you're trying to pick up and move on with your life. You know, like that she's like, I'm trying, but like it's taken a minute. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, which obviously, but and then it just the drama and the like symbolism. Like I can just picture it all in my head, which is what we do for a job anyway. But
Right.
like, I just feel it.
Well, it
yeah.
totally. I mean, it makes perfect sense that it's obviously also like a big moment in Mamma Mia. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like it like could be like part of Les Mis. Like that
Yeah.
opening is like so musical.
Yeah, and then you add that layer too, which I was studying in London when Mamma Mia came out, and I went like 4 times because it was like a happy pill. Like it was just so fun on stage, and it was like nothing had come out at that time. It was like 2000. You hadn't really seen plays like that where they
tied together pop songs.
yeah, like
used-
I had never seen that before, and that was so revolutionary. And like I liked ABBA before, but that gave me a whole other level, and just but it still just sticks with me. And I got to see. I went to ABBA Voyage. It was like one of my like COVID things that I was like, I want to go so bad. And so my friends and I went, and we were like crying and sweating because it was
to
like
the holograms.
yes,
Yes.
but you don't even notice.
Wow.
It was like one of the greatest
That's so
nights.
powerful.
And like it was one of those like heat waves in London. We were like sweating and crying, and we're like, I've never done the same at the same
Is it
time.
tears? Is it sweat?
Was there a live band or is
Yeah,
okay.
there actually
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
which is so interesting too. But it was amazing.
And it worked. Wow.
Because I guess they only ever really did like 185 shows. Like they didn't tour a lot because I think it was really hard for them. And so during COVID, we got to like, there was a Zoom with like Benny and Bjorn.
Really?
And
Lucky you.
I know that was a fun perk of the job. I was like, oh my gosh. And they said like, this is what we would have wanted the show to be. So I was
That
like,
makes sense.
I have to go to this. It's amazing. So.
That's amazing.
That was like when they had the love show at the Mirage in Vegas for the Beatles, and Paul and we were like, this is actually what we had hoped to do in 1967.
Yeah.
So if you enjoyed this, then you'll know.
It makes so much sense for what you guys do too, that you're focused on the lyrical and the storytelling. And I think I heard on your podcast, you talked about how you grew up with your dad listening to opera and like there's some show tunes.
Yeah.
Is that both of you?
Yeah.
And I actually didn't have that. And lyrics, I really respond more to sound. And every now and then a lyric will pop up, like that Portishead is sort of an example of like, I heard that song for decades before it kind of punched me in the jaw like it did that day, that gut punch of feeling. But I think the sonic picture is enough for me. That's kind of what I look for in music. Like we were talking about, choosing maybe an energy or an emotion to go to. But it just made me think of kind of a counter example where I think the backstory has nothing to do with anything. Would be one song that I chose is just because I can't explain why, something about this Genesis song from the album Abacab.
Okay.
It's called Keep It Dark, and it appears to be a song where he's like abducted by aliens.
That didn't happen?
And I mean, it may have happened. Phil's been through some
Don't
shit.
be skeptical now.
Phil has been
he
through
could
some
have.
stuff. But there's this sort of bridge or a chord, I don't even know, but there's a section of the song where it's kind of, it goes a certain direction, and then suddenly we're kind of launched into what feels like space, and it feels like this is the moment the aliens are taking him.
Is this post Peter Gabriel?
This is post Peter Gabriel. It's pre Invisible Touch.
I was going to say Invisible Touch.
It's right in this zone where they're still prog. It's a very prog record.
Okay.
So he's talking about a man's reported missing. Maybe he wandered from his home. I guess he's reporting on the story. So he's describing a man is missing, but it makes sense when you realize what he's been through. Like, I rarely listen to lyrics this carefully, but I'm like on the edge of my seat.
Because it's a
Wait,
story.
A band of thieves stole a man? So anyway, that's the storyline. That's the buildup. And then it goes into this like, I wish I could really tell you all the things that I've seen, all the things that happened to me and all the things I've seen. And here's the part that really gets me. Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Woo.
Aww.
That's so real.
Yeah.
That's like really
Wait,
real.
so
Yeah.
what got you
I don't
there?
know.
Yeah.
Wait, so a world of people with joy in their hearts?
Yeah.
Wait, we always, anytime there's an
Yeah.
episode where I bawed and I was like, of course the episode we don't have
I know,
I
tissues.
brought the songs that would make me cry, so this
I
shouldn't be a
know.
shock to anyone.
I know. And our tagline is grab those tissues because you
Jesus,
always need a
man.
good cry.
Because it's a world full
Yeah.
of people with happier lives. What's the rest of the line?
And dreams of a future with meaning and no need to hide.
Ugh.
It's like, I don't know. I can't,
Yeah.
it speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And sonically, like it's doing this kind of lift.
Yeah, I was
And
going to
then
say.
his voice goes higher and higher. It's like it's optimism.
Which is
But
Yeah.
is he describing the world we live in or the world he's being taken
No.
to?
Oh, man.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is a
real
safe
deep
space.
rupture.
Yeah, no, we're in a safe space.
This is a
Yeah.
Marianas Trench of meaning that at therapy next Thursday at 9 a.m., we will be exploring.
Let
But
us know
it's-
if you have a breakthrough.
Well, no,
Let's
it's
do it now.
I'm
Yeah.
so interested in like why
Yeah.
that hits me because
Yeah, it is
I don't
always
know, man.
really-
Even
yeah.
before I had a kid, you want the world to be a safe place, and you want
Yeah.
you want to feel like there's hope on the other side.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Well, do you
it's
feel
been
like
a interesting last couple months too? You know,
Of
like
course, the
how
years.
does that outweigh? Yeah.
I mean, there was
Yeah.
COVID before that,
Yeah.
and there was 9/11 before that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the centuries of trauma of the human race that sort of builds
Yeah.
up as layers of sediment, and then we walk upon them, and suddenly we're like, oh wait, this sad thing has been here all along, and now it's
Yeah.
affecting me. So it speaks some sort of language to me that,
Yeah.
maybe the cosmic joke of life, I always say in therapy, is sort of that Jacob's ladder thing where like in your final millisecond of life, it all makes sense and then it's over. Like that to me is the real like
Mm-hmm.
beauty and sadness. And I think this song sort of evokes that. It's like
Yeah.
this story of a man maybe being abducted by aliens and being shown something and then back to earth back
Yeah.
to keeping it dark.
Wow.
Everyone's silent.
Wow.
I have brought the mood down. Look, you guys
Well,
have
no.
a show called Sad
Yeah,
Song
no,
Queens.
we
This is
love
what-
Maybe
yeah.
we've got a
I
sad
wanna-
song king or two in the house.
I want to
We,
dig.
Hello?
we welcome everyone
All
into
right.
the club.
But do you feel like
Yeah.
you've lived in a world that is not joyous and kind?
I think that what's
You
being
must.
revealed is underneath the surface. I don't know maybe the answer to that question. I think I'm
Right, yeah.
very happy and I've got a really awesome family and that
Yeah.
kid's so rad.
Well, then maybe that's why you're like, how lucky am I that I have that
This
in my
guy's
life,
so
but not
rad.
everyone
Yeah.
does. Absolutely.
That could be it. There's a survivor. Look, okay, if you want to go
Yeah.
deep, I'm also Jewish. And you talk about the sediment of previous generations.
Of
Yes.
course, generational
You know,
trauma. Yeah.
There's generational trauma. Like I had to have my wife point out to me, like, it happened the other day. She's like, by the way, don't forget that you come from 6 million, like half of your people were exterminated. And like there's something dangerous about life in this planet and
Yeah.
I don't know how to stop this thought, but like
Yeah.
there's a Marianas Trench level rupture clearly in my being.
Yeah.
What's a Marianas Trench?
Oh, that's
in
the
the
deepest
ocean.
point
Oh,
in the
okay.
It's the
ocean.
Okay.
deepest
Like
valley.
5 or 6 miles down. But it's happy. Like it's a
Yeah.
happy life.
Yeah. No, I mean, Lindsay and I, even though stuff's happened,
Yeah.
we're fairly optimistic, happy people, but I just think we lean into the feelings, you
Yeah.
know? And I think that's why we like these songs, that it like, yeah, it helps kind of like, I don't know, sometimes
Yeah.
I think in mine, I like to feel seen, maybe like you were saying, but I'm like, I think I do like those where you're like, oh my gosh, someone's gone through this.
Well,
you
what
know?
I think is also so
Yeah.
interesting is
Yeah,
that
good point.
you
Yeah.
said you're a music person before a lyric person.
Right.
Yet
right.
musically, I think all the sadness is in the lyric.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
You
music
know?
wasn't particularly
Yeah.
sad.
The story
Yeah.
brought
The
me
lyrics
in there. You're totally
Got you,
right.
and that's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about knowing, hearing something and knowing, you're like, oh, I can relate to that, or this person is
Yeah.
singing something. I'll say one of my other songs is "Dance with My Father" by Luther Vandross.
Oh my God. Actually, I had a conversation with another music supervisor and I told her about the podcast and she was like, dance with my father.
So
great.
released in 2003. My father had passed less than a year before that. And then also to see like the Luther Vandross has this, there's an amazing documentary that's out about his story. And I learned so much, and I think we all are learning so much about, this guy who starts off as a background singer on some of your favorite songs, eventually gets his own career. But like so much of his, ambition is stymied by the fact that like, he's in the closet, and we all kind of knew, but like, he doesn't feel like he can be the biggest pop star known to man, despite having just this phenomenal instrument of a voice
Yeah.
and all these other things going on. And then you have on top of that, you've got a black father of a previous generation. And also his father, he lost him when I think Luther's 8 or 9 years old. Like he's very young. I say all that just to say that when Dance with My Father came out, one of my sister's favorite singers, by the way, I have 4 sisters, but Spring, she's a huge Luther fan. And the second the song came out, I was like, and he's saying about a father who had passed a long time ago, but we had just lost. My father is a lion in our family. Like, that's a whole nother story. But me and the other 5 siblings, we hear the song and, there are lines in it.
And I'm gonna have to see some tears.
No, I'm not going to go
it's
there.
your turn.
Here's the thing. This song, which you can hear, it sounds like it was recorded on a Casio keyboard.
Totally.
There's a schmaltzy aspect to it. I'm more than willing to admit. But
his voice, come on.
his voice
Yeah.
does things
Yeah.
that should
agreed.
not be allowed.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere somebody said like, he could take something that would have been corny or cheesy, and so he makes it like a prayer,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And just the fact that he sings so much about I wish. He wishes that his mom could dance with his dad one more time. That kind of stuff. Yeah. It is tough to hear. It's
Tear
tough
check.
to hear.
Tear check.
No,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
eyes cooperate.
Oh. You got Rob.
I'm misty. I'm misty.
Yeah.
By the way, at my father's funeral, I attempted to sing a song that I knew that mom and dad loved and could not get out of. I couldn't do it. I got up there, the music started, and I was just like, I'm sorry, guys, I can't do this right
Did
now.
you just burst into
Can't
tears?
sing.
What was the
I mean,
song?
there was, as time goes by.
Oh,
My
my
parents are
God.
older parents, and like,
Yeah.
I was just like, just saying a kiss is but a kiss, and you'll get through it. And I couldn't
Yeah.
get through the first
I mean,
word.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
But Dance with My Father, I mean, like to this day,
yeah.
I think anybody who's lost a parent can
Yeah.
relate to. I would play a song that would last forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I lost my dad 2 years ago to Alzheimer's, and
It's rough.
I lost him twice, basically. Yeah. But that's, I mean, just that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Yeah, like the conversations you could have had. And,
Yeah,
I mean,
and admittedly, I'm wimping out. Like the last verse, I think is actually sort of like the saddest because it's really talking about. But and then we lost Luther, and then Luther died like 2 years later. So he's been gone for 20 years. How crazy is that? But I just think that he lost his father, and then he released this song. He was actually too sick to ever perform it. They asked him to perform at the Grammys. They had Celine Dion sing it on his behalf because he was sick by that point. In your own time, if you want to go to a sad place.
How old were you when your father passed?
I was 27.
That's hard too.
Yeah.
I mean, it never is easy at any age.
No,
but
it's not easy at any age. And I always wonder, like, is it harder to lose them when you've been used to them being in your life for 40 and 50 years? Like, most people I know, my wife's got two parents. When we got married, she had two parents and three grandparents. I was like, who are you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I came into this world with one grandparent that I got to hang out with, and so, but I don't know what's worse. I mean, like he lost his father at about 8, but according to his mom, Mary Ida, she was like, because he recounts a time when they argued and then he went to sleep, but then he woke up because he heard stirring in the kitchen. He went there and they were dancing together.
Oh.
And she was like, I don't know how you remembered that. Because he was 7.5, but it clearly left an impression.
Core memory.
Yeah.
And it's such like I don't know. My dad's alive, but I danced with him as a kid. Or like when you were little and you stepped on their toes and did that thing, right? Like it's such a universal moment. Thank you.
We got people. We're just puddles of mess.
I mean,
I love it. I don't love it, but I love it.
Dad's crying since my son is in the room at this taping. And this conversation has evoked in me a memory that I'm unlocking, which is crazy. Coincidentally, I remember seeing my dad cry after the divorce, listening to ABBA. He was listening to, it wasn't that song, but the same record. He was listening to the song Eagle. And I don't know why, because a dream, I'm an eagle, I spread my wings. Yeah. And I'll just never forget, because when you're a kid and your dad is crying, and for me, it was the first, it made him more human. It unlocked something new. Clearly, I'm feeling a mirror or something is rhyming in history with me crying in the room after an ABBA song with my son. So I'm and Diallo's story. So there's a lot of real emotions happening here. So it's really.
I've met your dad. He's got a rad dad.
Rad dad. Not a sad dad.
Not a sad.
Well, today I'm the sad dad.
Yeah.
I am the sad dad.
Amazing.
No, I think that stuff's the real stuff. And
it's the real stuff.
We actually kind of started the podcast as like
how many guests can we make cry? And today,
totally. But I think it was like, my dad was sick for so long. He had it for 10 years, right? The conversations that were helping me get through all that were like things like this, right? And that music can connect and really unlock.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that was like, I just want to talk about real stuff. I don't want to talk about surface. And so that's what we were here to do.
I think clearly something all of us in this room share is like, the love of music. I told you in my sort of origin story, like I was just a fan like everyone. Like people, you're born and you like music. It's just human nature to like music. And then over time, my love for it was like, well, I want to make it. I want to listen to it. I want to DJ it. I want to remix it. I want to make TikToks about it. I want to have a podcast about it. I want to write a book about it. To love music is to like throughout your life find many ways of participating in it. I want to see it live. I want to watch documentaries about it. I want to read books about it.
Yeah.
So music supervision and conversations with friends, and it's just another way to experience this thing that if I had my way, all 24 hours of every day would be wall-to-wall music in some capacity. Some of 5 or 6 of these things every day sprinkled throughout the day would be a perfect day.
Well, and the passion comes through on your podcast too. I mean, as a listener and fan, like you guys really I feel it, and it's infectious. So, yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Well, I'm going to just say thank you guys for being here. As we wrap up, we don't really have time to dive too deep into these others, but Laura and I brought 2 other songs to the table. Laura, what were you?
I mean, how do you not do Adele, someone like you? So, and I got to quickly Lindsay and I both were talking about this. We got to see it before at the Largo. She performed like a special thing for music supervisors.
Before that album came out, before
so
21
it was like our
came
first
out.
listen, all that. I don't know. There's like 50
That's
people.
2009?
Oh.
2009?
2009.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
This is the big
Because
one.
I think
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
pregnant.
21. Yeah.
I think I remember being pregnant.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's like 50 people in the room, and you could hear a pin drop, and it was just like, this will change her life.
I always talk like performance-wise, that song lives. Like, yes, lyrically and musically, it's sad, but the performance is what really
Right.
brings
Yeah.
it home. There is so much hurt in that performance.
Yeah.
And then my other sad love song was "The Scientist" by Coldplay, which for me just like it hits here. I'm folding in
Nobody
on my
said it
chest.
would be easy?
No
Yeah.
one. Well, no one ever said it would be easy.
No one does.
No one ever said it would be this hard. And I feel like if you're in a relationship or breaking up, or even just living life, like that's always the case. Like I was like, is this a breakup song? Like it's a shame for us to part, but I'm going back to the start. Are they getting back together? Anyway, but that's also like musically, that song just gets me. Those
And the
piano chords.
simplicity. And that was almost mine, by
Yeah,
the way.
of course. I mean, Coldplay's like was
Yeah.
the original favorite music supervisor band in the early aughts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But thank you guys for coming. This was amazing.
No, this was so good. This actually has me opening up my playlist and being like, let's add some more sad songs.
Let's add some more Genesis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so
Yeah.
I was scrolling through your Instagram and I was like, have they talked about some sad songs? But you guys
Yeah.
are usually
Not
yeah.
a whole lot.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot, but we definitely will add some sad songs to the repertoire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you think of any more, send them on over.
Come on back.
Maybe we'll come
Yeah.
on back
Just
and
come
talk to
back.
them.
Yeah.
You guys can ask us questions the next time.
Is Maps by Yeah Yeah Yeahs a sad song? I would argue yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
She
don't
don't
love you.
I don't love
like,
you. They
which-
don't love you like I love
They
you.
don't love you like I love you, and also later in the song she says they don't love me like I love you.
Yeah. No, kills.
Which
Yes.
is such a
Blew our
brain,
mind, yeah.
blows our brains.
We only
every
noticed
Yeah.
that when we were
Yes.
listening
When
to
we were-
the vocal a
Yes.
cappella, on the
We
show.
I think
realized that
I
in real
saw
time.
that one.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like,
What?
yeah.
yeah.
I'd never
'cause
heard that before.
No, but I mean, you feel the angst. Like, I would argue that's definitely a
I'll
sad
ask her
song.
next time I see her in Trader Joe's.
Okay.
Amazing.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
for having
Yeah.
us.
All right, talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you for joining us today on Sad Song Queens, because you always need a good cry.
We will link these songs on our Spotify playlist, so please check it out.
Huge thanks to LUXXURY and Diallo Riddle. Special production thanks to Rob Seals, who has let us graciously record at the Songwriting School of Los Angeles, Keahu Kahuanui, Miles Bergsma, Stephanie Gangle, Wyatt Rouse, and our researcher Emily Cartham.
Our theme song is All My Favorite Songs by Weezer, and our outro music is by Wyatt Rouse.